The most drama-filled and controversial elements of corporate finance are the merger of two companies or the acquisition of one company by another. These activities make headlines in the financial press and can sometimes be the source of scandal. In this lesson, we will discuss the different types of mergers and acquisitions. One company can acquire another company using one of three basic legal procedures: merger or consolidation, acquisition of stock, or acquisition of assets. Each of these methods are legally distinct from one another, but the financial press often ignores the differences, instead calling any form of acquisition a merger. We will refer to the acquiring company as the bidder and the company being sought and potentially acquired as the target firm. Mergers and consolidations follow basically the same rules. Both methods of acquisition involved combining the assets and liabilities of both companies, with the only difference being whether or not a new company is made. Moving forward, we will use the word merger to generally refer to both mergers and consolidations. Acquiring a firm using a merger has its advantages and disadvantages. The main advantage of a merger is that it's legally simple and costs less than other acquisition methods. The key disadvantage of a merger is that the stockholders of each company must vote to approve it. Generally, an approval requires at least 2/3 of the share votes, and procuring these votes can be laborious. An alternative method of acquiring another company involves buying their voting stock with an exchange of cash, shares of stock, or other securities. No matter the starting point, eventually the offer reaches the company's stockholders. It's possible to achieve this through a tender offer, which is a public offer to buy shares made by one firm directly to the shareholders of another firm. Shareholders who accept the offer tender their share by exchanging them for cash or securities, or both, depending on the offer. Most of the time, a tender offer is dependent upon the bidder getting a certain percentage of the total voting shares. If too few shares are tendered, the bidder usually withdraws or reformulates the offer. Deciding whether to do an acquisition by stock or by merger requires careful consideration. An acquisition by stock does not require shareholder meetings or votes. Additionally, the bidding company can bypass the target company's management and board of directors, working only with the shareholders. Acquisition can sometimes be unfriendly. Management of the target company may resist acquisition, which often raises the cost of acquisition by stock, making it more expensive than a merger. Oftentimes, a significant minority of shareholders will hold out a tender offer. When this occurs, the bidder cannot completely absorb the target company, which may delay realization of the merger benefits, or may be costly in another way. If the bidder wants to completely absorb another company, a merger is required. Formal mergers often take place after an acquisition by stock. Another method of acquisition is through the purchase of most or all of a company's assets. This is basically equivalent to buying the company. In these scenarios, the target firm still exists but has no assets, so it is just a shell that will exist until stockholders dissolve it. An acquisition of assets requires a formal vote of the target company's shareholders, which avoids the issue of minority shareholders holding out. It often requires title transfers to individual assets, which can be an expensive legal process. Acquisitions can be classified into three types: horizontal acquisition, vertical acquisition, and conglomerate acquisition. Horizontal acquisition occurs when a bidder acquires a company in the same industry. Antitrust regulations pose a risk in horizontal mergers. When companies at different steps of the production process merge, it is a vertical acquisition. Conglomerate acquisitions refer to a merger between a bidder and target company in unrelated fields of business. When control of a company is transferred from one group of shareholders to another, it is called a takeover. There are three methods to achieve this: acquisitions, proxy contests, and going private transactions. The term takeover is general and encompasses a variety of activities outside of just acquisition. Another takeover method is a proxy contest. In a proxy contest, one group votes in new people on the board of directors in an attempt to get controlling seats. The right to cast another person's vote is a proxy. A group of discontent shareholders will solicit proxies from the rest of the shareholders in a proxy contest. When a small group of investors purchases all of the equity shares of a public firm, it is called a going private transaction. Typically, the group includes members of incumbent management and some outside investors. These transactions are known as leveraged buyouts, LBOs, because much of the money used to purchase the stock is typically borrowed. If existing management plays a big role in the transaction, they can also be called management buyouts, MBOs. The shares of the firm are delisted from stock exchanges and can no longer be purchased on the open market. Now, next time you see the financial press talking about mergers, you can play a fun game. Read up on all the details and discuss with friends to figure out if it's really a merger or if it's actually an acquisition or even a takeover.